1980.
All right, I am rolling.
And what was that out of school, or were you?
Yeah, I left. I was in Tech College in Western Wisconsin Tech, and then which is now Technical College, and we used to call it Wee Wee Tech. Well, I had a job lined up, so when I got here, but I came here to be in the music business.
Okay, that's good. Do you perform, or is it mainly the background recording kind of?
Background recording. I used to perform. I recorded records when I was a kid and did all kinds of stuff. But mostly since I've been here, I've been a tech guy.
Okay. So I think we should start with either one of you, but how you both got involved in this to begin with. How did that connection?
Well, you go first because you got started in this first.
Sure, oh, absolutely. So I met with Nathan, who owned the building, and just spoke with him about opportunities of things we can do here. And he said, well, what would you like to do first? And I said, whatever the community would like for us to do with this building. And so that's how it evolved. And then one afternoon we went over to concert production and we ran into Ricky, who was basically just a breath of fresh air and just very knowledgeable about the whole market, and had the same passion basically to create something in the community that was relevant, that was a showcase, a building where we can have people gather and just we can have different types of events just to cater to whatever the needs were in the community. So it evolved from there, where we've been just answering phone calls and saying yes to, you can have an event here, you can have your wedding, you can have a concert, you can have your Christmas party. So it was just a great marriage of three people that had their unique skills behind them that could bring a place like this to life and create happiness for the community.
About when do you think you would say that happened, where it all started to come together into fruition?
So it's been about a year and a half ago.
Yep.
About a year and a half ago.
February 2018, to be exact, yes.
Is when it all really started to come together, where you were all three of you kind of working in
That's
unison.
where literally Nathan and I just walked over and met Ricky, and we walked over here, and then just it all evolved from there.
And what are some examples of when it did come together and you felt like, wow, that worked out great. I like what we did there. It was unique, and maybe someone who, whether it was be a wedding or a concert.
Sure. Actually, both are great examples. But the first big event we had was a wedding, and we just had a great wedding party, and the execution was flawless. Everyone walked out of this building just with smiles on their face, and that's the moment where we basically said we need to replicate this going forward. Just people walking out of this building happy. We delivered happiness, and that just made us feel like we were doing something worthwhile.
Do you remember the name of the couple?
It was, yes, Tori and Corey.
Tori and Corey, yes.
Tori and Corey, you remember the last name? No?
No, I'll have to get that.
That's right. Maybe we can get some photos of them.
Oh, absolutely.
If they're
Yes, they've
that.
actually told us that we can use their photos, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Let's turn to you a little bit. What's Concert Productions?
It's Concert Production, there's no S on it actually. So Concert Production was a business started by John Richards, who has lived here all of his life, and started in 1987. And he was touring with Lyle Lovett at the time, and still does. He toured with other people like Roseanne Cash and Emmylou Harris. And so he had always been in the sound business. He'd always worked for other people and been partners with other people, so he finally started his own company in 1987. We built our own speaker cabinets. I've been working with him since before he opened, actually, but we built speaker cabinets, our own designs. We toured. We have local sound and lighting rentals, staging rentals. We started a music store in 1993, I think, is when we started the music store officially, and then moved up onto the square 22 years ago this July, and which is now the Concert Musical Supply and Concert Production Store, just a block from here.
What street is that on?
Main.
And so you're still doing the same things you were doing pretty much?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I was on the road the last 10 years with Lyle Lovett as production manager and monitor engineer, and I decided to retire from the road because it's just been a long time of doing that, 35 years total of touring myself. And so I was just kind of helping John with his business, and one day these guys walked in and I go like, holy smokes, this is just what I was looking for, because I wanted to do something that was what I did on the road, but I wanted to do it here. And I've always been a proponent of things happening in Murfreesboro. I'm tired of having to go to Nashville every time I want to see some entertainment, or I want to see my friends perform, or even I work with artists trying to get them started in a music career. And so as a manager too, it's like, I know we have to go to Nashville to do this, but it would be nice if there were places here that these people could hone their craft and get exposure and make themselves known. So when this happened, I'm going like, and I knew about the Walnut House because of what Nathan had done here before with his MTSU students and all the concerts that happened here through the years, that I knew this was a place that concerts could be held. And it's a great environment to do so. There are several places around the country that are similar to this, namely like the Ram's Head Tavern in Annapolis or the Ark in Ann Arbor, Michigan, that are staples of artists that started in these places and now are super famous and still go back there and play these little places, because they're both rooms that every seat is within 50 feet of that main stage there. And so everybody has an intimate view of terrific entertainers and music stars. And so, I immediately, jumped on board of anything that they wanted to do. And then we started with weddings, and I'm so excited about weddings too, because it's the same kind of thing as doing a live concert. There's a lot of things that have to be set up. There's a lot of things about making your client happy as you make your artist happy that you tour with. You have to make all the audience members happy. You have to make everybody happy who comes in the door. And that task is the same thing as pulling off concerts on a national and international basis,
People have talked about how the Murphy Center used to have a lot of big name
Yeah.
concerts, and they've also talked about we have a big recording industry here. We have performers and artists who are from this area.
Right.
And yet there isn't a really big, it's not a music town, partly because of Nashville. What is going to need to happen for that to change, do you think?
Well, first I want to say that Murfreesboro has been a big music town in the past. In the late 90s, the Nashville scene actually did several articles about the music scene down here and called the square Little Music Row. We had bands like Self, The Features, the Katies, that were all on Sponge Bath Records, and the record label itself had an office there right on the corner of Main and Maple. And Self was internationally acclaimed for their recordings, and the Mahafis went on to do other things, namely Matt, who's still doing things with major artists, namely Beck, and so that whole scene, and the Features are still out doing shows, the Katies are still out doing shows. I mean, these are fantastic acts that had national acclaim, and it all started right here on the square in Murfreesboro, and was part of the recording industry management folks at MTSU, because that's where it all kind of grew out of and became a thing.
So what happened?
I think music styles changed. Clubs used to have a lot of live music, and I think there's different styles of music came to be, and it just kind of fell to the wayside, and for a long time there really wasn't. I mean, even kind of Nashville dropped off the whole live scene, and Austin became the place to go see live entertainment in the country. It was they still advertise themselves as the live music capital of the world. But I think it's coming back around, and part of it is music has, in my opinion, music has kind of turned back to acoustic styles, and it's gotten a little bit away from all the electronic electronica type music, and it's gone back to acoustic and roots music. Americana has taken a huge leap forward. We now have the strongest radio station in all of Middle Tennessee, the only 100,000 watt radio station in Middle Tennessee, which is WMOT, and they're broadcasting Americana music, and it's run by folks from MTSU and students who are learning how to do things. And it's nice to have live DJs on a radio station again. I think people really love and appreciate that fact. So you see this whole acoustic thing rebounding and coming back around, and I think the timing is just perfect to reestablish a musical community. And this community is full of songwriters and entertainers. It's packed full.
So if you had a vision for the kind of artist that would be perfect for performing here in that roots or Americana style, like they had the event out at the brewery that seemed to be successful, the audio
Sure.
quality was great, the performers were great.
Absolutely.
It was that mid-range kind of, you know, it wasn't really big names, but big
Right.
names in that area.
Mhm.
So what would you see that you could do here, and then it would really start to make a name for itself?
I think the Americana and the country side of things is great. I also think that there's room for rock, you know, because there's a lot of rock bands in this community that are playing house concerts because there's no place for them to play. I think too that having a place to play that's not a bar is important, because I think a lot of people want to go out and see musical events in a place where there's not a lot of people drinking alcohol and that sort of environment. And they like to sit in a seat in an environment that maybe like a miniature Ryman auditorium, where yeah, if you want to have a beer you can have one, but you're really here to sit in a seat and watch a show. So I think rock fills this space wonderfully. Again, the acoustics in this place are remarkable. I can have a loud band in here and it's not really hard on your ears. And then we're going to do electronic dance music as well. We're going to try to get that flowing, and there's a ton of indie rock bands that are coming up off of the campus that again are just doing local house concerts and need a place where they can go and play and have a world-class you know, sound and lighting system to show off their talent.
It might be too early or premature for you to mention this, but like, what are some of the names of the artists or bands that you think would be good here, or that you're trying to?
You know, I mean, I'm looking at a bunch of stuff. So I think if I say any bands and I don't have them, that'll be worse than trying to throw that out there right now.
You can say the ones that were here.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've had Jim Lauderdale, you know, who's written a ton of songs that have been cut by a lot of artists like George Strait and people like that, and he just released his 35th album. So he's a guy that's always been on the A-list songwriters in Nashville, you know. So he just performed here, as well as Wood and Wire, who's a Grammy-nominated bluegrass act. And then we had an Italian duet here, Anita Camarella and Davide Ficini, who perform in town once a year when they come over from Italy, and just play these magical songs, Italian swing music, which is good for Davide here, who's Italian. That's
right.
So when they came here, what were the draws in terms of the number of people, and what's the price point for you guys?
You know, we had price point all the way from $10 up to $40. Attendance was not good, but we didn't expect a lot because we tried to put some names out and tried to get attention. But I think what we're finding out is Murfreesboro is kind of a hard egg to crack as far as letting people know, you know, what's happening in this community. And there are other things that are happening in Murfreesboro right now that are on the leading edge of trying to make those things happen, like the Rutherford Arts Alliance that is recently formed. I think more people should be paying attention to the Murfreesboro Pulse, because the Murfreesboro Pulse is the only publication in Middle Tennessee that tells everything that's going on in the Murfreesboro community. I mean, every concert, every book release, every movie schedule from the local movie theaters, civic events, political events, everything is listed in there. And I know a lot of people may not know where to get it, but You can go to their website and find out, or you can view the newspaper on the website. So I think that's important. But you know, since the advent of social media, we've become a really segmented community, I think. I think people stay in their little social media groups and they don't venture out. They don't expand. And so it's hard to get things to just drop into people's lap. I've found kind of that word of mouth is kind of working almost as good as anything in this community right now, just getting out in the community and talking to people and networking with networking groups. And but it's a lot of little things that you have to do. And so we're going to continue doing these concerts to try to get the majority of people. Just an off story here. I was moving a piano for a lady who was in her 50s, and she was telling me all the concerts that she's going to in Nashville, and we had just partnered. It was early in 2018. And I told her, well, we're going to start doing concerts at the Walnut House. And she said, look, you have to go to Nashville. You have to go early enough to get a decent parking place. You're going to spend at least $25 to $40 on parking. You're going to have to eat out while you're there. And when you're eating out in the Nashville area, downtown Nashville area, it's expensive. And then you're paying for tickets at upwards of, you know, $150, maybe $200 a ticket, depending on how good of a seat you want. So you combine all of these things together. She and her husband go out and they spend $400 to $500 almost every other week going to see a concert in Nashville, and that they would love to see concerts here in Murfreesboro, where the parking is free, where there's all kinds of restaurants on the square that are really fine restaurants at really great prices. And so it'd be far less expensive to just stay in your own community. And when you get done, you don't have to drive 40 minutes home.
Mm-hmm. Nathan, you talked earlier about
David,
I'm sorry, the magic. So, can you explain some of the little things that you're also trying to draw, not just the music and the weddings?
Oh, absolutely. So ultimately, this is a gathering space of any kind. Really, just it could be we're performing arts, and one of the venues or one of the performers that we met here was a magician. And he just basically mentioned how he didn't have a place to perform on a regular basis. So we said, now you do. You have a place here, and we'd love to host your family-friendly events. Hopefully we can make the community happy with this kind of performance, this kind of event on a regular basis. And it could be other types of events, such as partnering with MTSU. They had a jazz department, and they were looking for a venue where they could perform on a regular basis and get experience performing for the general public. And so we made our smaller room available downstairs, where they would join us every other Thursday, and it would be an open performance for any students just to come in and just perform. And it was just a great setup, and people that were the guests that were there were pinching themselves as to how good the students were, and how great it was to have a venue like this that was safe, and that was somewhere that anyone, all ages would be welcome. So smoke-free and safe and just easy to get to. And so really it's that kind of a venue where it just needs to morph into any kind of gathering space that is helpful or useful and meaningful to the community.
In addition to magic, and we can close on this for our background, but I think you've got two smaller kind of concerts coming up on Wednesday nights. What can you share about those? Because it'll probably be after that we'll do that, or we'll be able to get some either video or pictures to cover it. So who's coming?
Absolutely. So the singer-songwriters, and I'll let Ricky speak to it. He's been closer.
Yeah, so the Middle Tennessee Songwriters is a show that's put together by a friend of mine named David Graham, who's been in an organization called the Middle Tennessee Songwriters Group. And so there are 12 songwriters on each show that are accomplished songwriters. These are people who have had cuts and the recordings by major artists, or are trying to, or are performers themselves, singer-songwriters trying to have their own career as an artist. And then we also, at the end, we have a 5 person open mic night. So the first 5 that show up get to sign up for the open mic. And that's also a contest because we want these people to be amateurs, people who are not accomplished singer-songwriters that think they have a shot at it. So we have this contest every night, and all the people that are present vote for their favorite. And then at the end of this series, which ends on November 20th, the winner from each show will compete together for a grand prize, which is about a $1,500 package, which is growing because we have more people throwing in prizes all the time. But basically, you're getting a 5-song EP with a band of musicians to record your songs, and so you have a nice recording of your music. There's a package from Concert Musical Supply and other vendors locally that we're working with. So it's going to be a nice prize package. But we want it to be somebody who thinks that they may have a shot of being a successful songwriter. And our first week was won by Ellie Austin, who's a 17-year-old songwriter who came up and just knocked everybody out with this most incredible song. And so, and then these people maybe on the next round of songwriter nights would become part of the regular songwriter groups.
So is this a multi-night event?
Yes, it's the first and third Wednesday of each month, except for July 31st we added in because there was an extra Wednesday in the month, and at the beginning of this venture we didn't want to have 3 weeks in between the 2 events.
But then it will culminate into this November 20th thing?
Correct. And at the end of that, we'll start it over again.
Okay. And you'll send me some more information on that.
Absolutely. I also want to say, too, that other than music, Kara Kemp is going to have a storyteller event here, which we had the United Way benefit, United We Style, which was this incredible event with people styling hair on a stage and different people getting their hair styled up there. And then we had storytellers from different walks of life in the city. We had, and I'll have to get the reference for names, but you can talk about that. But then we had this guy named Mark Lamb who gave his story about Dolly Parton and how it affected his life and things like that. And these storytellers are incredible. And so she's going to be doing that on a smaller basis in the Walnut room downstairs. Again, to let people learn that they can stand in front of people and tell their stories. So that's just another little
Like a
thing
TED
that we're
Talk
doing.
kind of version.
Exactly.
There's a
exactly.
storytelling festival, and that's good, Steve. You can get cut away.
Oh, okay.
There's a storytelling festival in that